bass.
Welcome back to the next part of this Truth and Rhythm episode. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. Also become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon, or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you so much for your interest and support. Enjoy. What were some of your biggest influences on the dance music front? You know, we talked about your influences on the soul side, but who inspired you and influenced you in the dance area?
Stevie Wonder, obviously, you know, he was just great. Not so much in terms of disco and stuff like that. He was just a great, fast R&B songwriter. He was just a great composer and just a phenomenal producer. So I followed a lot of his stuff. Then I loved the stuff that was coming out of Philadelphia from Gamble and Huff. Their type of writing, their type of arranging, Bobby Martin, and once again, my mom's cousin, Tom Bell. All right, I love doing that kind of stuff. Then the music of my cousins, Kool and the Gang, you know, that's the New York, New Jersey connection, and that was influencing me and giving me ideas and giving me beats and so forth and so on. But centrally, my primary influences with regard to the dance music that I did during stepping away from Black Ivory was fueled by James Calloway, who was Black Ivory's bass player, and my cousin Sonny Davenport, who was my cousin, and he was a drummer. So between James, myself, and Sonny, we developed a style and a formula for composing songs and beginning to arrange songs, and that became the team in terms of songwriting and so forth and so on. So it's just a part of continued evolution.
Did you miss singing a lot, or you kind of were so buried in what you're doing?
I kind of never stopped singing. See, the funny thing about it is, right after I did Freak for Patrick, Patrick was friends with Jacques Fred Petrus, who was the producer of the Peter Jacques Band, and also the producer of Change. And he was looking for a lead vocalist to sing on a couple of records on the Peter Jacques Band album, Fire Night Dance. So they called me in, and I sang it. And I sang the lead vocals on it. Came out, it was a huge disco hit all over the place. And that kind of kept my voice in the forefront of people's ears, you know, but they were hearing me sing in my natural voice as opposed to my falsetto voice, which is what I started with. That led in 1978 to me being approached by the Aleem twins, Tahaka and Tunde Wa Aleem, initially to do the arrangement for their record Hooked on Your Love. Excuse me. After I did the arrangement and brought in the musicians and, you know, we did the strings, horns, rhythm, everything like that, they asked me if I would consider singing the song, you know, just singing, doing a lead. And I said, sure, I'd be happy to. And once again, I sang that lead in my natural voice, and Hooked on Your Love came out, and it was a massive hit for them. All right. But in the meantime, it began establishing me as a lead vocalist in my natural voice. So shortly after that came Let's Do It by Conversion. And right after that came the Log album, and continuing with doing singles with the Aleems. After Hooked on Your Love, we did Get Down Friday Night. Then we did Release Yourself and Get Loose. And that led to Confusion, and that led to the Casually Formal album on Atlantic. So all of which kind of during which time I transmuted from a slow jam falsetto singer into an up-tempo dance kind of guy singing in my natural voice. And that's what the world has heard more of than, say what I did during the Black Ivory years.
It must have surprised some folks, though. Like, you're the guy that sang in those soul ballads, and right?
Still does. It still. I have friends that still don't believe it, but yeah, that's what it is. That's the truth of it.
Leroy, I want to mention a few of the acts that I mentioned at the intro, and if you could just kind of share a memory or two from some of those, like Herbie Mann. How did you connect with him?
Again, Herbie Mann was a Patrick Adams project. He was working. He had a contract with Atlantic Records. He did BB King. He did the Freak album. He did quite a few things. And when Herbie Mann was already signed to Atlantic, and they were looking for a new producer. So they offered the project to Patrick, and Patrick said, "Leroy, what do you have for Herbie Mann?" And I really didn't have anything. So again, I called in James Calloway and Sonny Davenport, and together we wrote a song called Stomp Your Feet to the Beat that Patrick loved immediately, and he played it for Herbie Mann. He loved it. And so we went in, and with this massive orchestra, massive production, I remember we did it at the Power Station, which was, I think that was the biggest studio I'd ever been in to date. All right, I think we had something like, close to 40 musicians, strings, horns, everything like that, harp. It was crazy. And that was my first full orchestral arrangement. Patrick just said, do that song, write the charts, put it in front of the musicians, good luck. And so the musicians, when we ultimately began producing the song, and I was most worried about the orchestra, but I put the charts in front of the orchestra, and when they started realizing it, they was like, "Wow, you did this and so forth." I said, "Yeah, it's my first joint." They was like, "You sound like you've been doing this for years and so forth," and they actually got up and gave me a standing ovation. And I was like, "Well, don't do that. That's just going straight to my head." But from that point, Patrick was confident about my arrangement abilities and my ability to put charts in front of musicians and do a competent job. So I was always grateful to him for trusting me to do that.
I'm thinking that during that era, you must have been pretty much just like living in the studio.
Yeah, we did a lot of stuff, and we were always looking to go back in. Whenever we went home, we were planning to, what's the next time we're going to be going in? What's the next project? It was very, very busy and very, very active, and it was cool. It was cool because I had, as I said, in James and Sonny, I had an amazing team. And we just supported each other to get us through the work. So it was very cool.
What about Eddie Kendricks? I'm thinking that must have maybe been especially a thrill. I'm sure you idolized the Temptations and all.
Well, I'll tell you, Eddie Kendricks was one of my favorite vocalists. The stuff that he did with the Temptations, Cloud Nine, The Way You Do the Things You Do, Just My Imagination, those were just dream songs for me. So when Patrick said, I got the Eddie Kendricks project on it and Arista Records, you got a song for him? And I said, no, but I'll write one, I think the next step was to tell James and Sonny, we're going to be writing a song for Eddie Kendricks. And everybody was like, "Oh man, that's the Temptations! Oh my God, that's our idol!" Da, 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 da. And I was just on the moon too. So then we called Eddie. Patrick gave us Eddie's number, and we called him, and we had a conversation with Eddie about what he wanted to sing about, and something I like to do when I'm dealing with artists. I try to tailor something for them. And one of the things Eddie told us, casually, that he always hated doing the moves with the Temptations. He's not a dancer. I'm not a dancer. I don't like dancing. I did the moves because I had to. That was part of the job of being a Temptation, but I'm not a dancer. And that actually gave Sonny the idea and the song title, Never Used to Dance, right? So we go back into our little home studio, and we begin constructing that song. And it was all about the idea of Never Used to Dance is, the guys that aren't dancers, how the guys is like standing on the wall and just checking the chicks out and all of that, right? But you can't get them on the dance floor, but there's this one chick that's just so fine, right? And you see her dancing, and then she gets you out there she's the one that gets you out there on the floor. And that was the whole story of Never Used to Dance. Eddie heard the story, loved it, and we went in the studio and had an amazing time just working with a legend like Eddie Kendricks. It was just amazing.
I can only imagine what a thrill that was for you at the time.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
How did you and Patrick feel when disco started to wane and there was sort of that backlash? You guys continued to produce quality dance music, but there certainly was a bit of a backlash heading into the early 80s. How did you deal with that?
Well, we knew dance music wasn't going nowhere, no matter what you call it. Disco was a term that came in to describe dance music. But before disco came in as a term, there was dance music that fit the definition of disco. All right. So it didn't really matter to us what it was called or the depth of disco as a term. Terms die. Right. But dance music, just as it existed before disco was a term, will always exist. And now, although it's being called house and techno and the different forms like that, it's still essentially dance music, whether you call it disco or house or whatever. It's still dance music. Dance music didn't go anywhere, so Patrick and I weren't really worried.
Yeah, no doubt. I think first they started calling it like club music or something after they stopped wanting to call it disco.
Right.
And then house came in.
And the whole thing about disco is that was just a giant publicity stunt anyway. When radio stations and so forth staged that event in order to regain control over what they felt like they lost control of, which is a lot of people were doing disco, so we need to do something that kills it. And they staged that gigantic event. Now, all of it meant nothing to me because, as I said, I knew the dance music wasn't going nowhere.
How did you connect with Rick James? Or did you connect or just contribute a song, or what was that about?
Well, we met him, and here's the story. It's real quick. We went into the studio, Blank Tapes, on 20th Street in New York City, because the proprietor of the studio, Bob Blank, he just had some extra time, and he said, "Would you guys like to come in and do a couple of demos just on, off the fly?" And so we said, "Yeah, let's go." So, James, Sonny, and I went down there, and we wrote and produced 3 demos. And one of them was Big Time, the first one. So on our way uptown, we said, I gave Patrick a call, and I said, "Patrick, where you at?" And he was at Kenny Morris's house. Kenny Morris was one of Patrick's partners and co-producers. He lived on 57th Street. So we said, well, we're going to slide by and stop by and see you because, Patrick said he'd like to hear what we did. we get up to Kenny's house and get upstairs, and they let us inside, and sitting in the couch in the couch area is Rick James, and Kenny introduces us. And we like, oh, wow, Rick James, it's so cool. Nice to meet you, so forth and so on. And, you know, sat down, nice glass of wine, you know, clinking glasses and stuff like that. And Rick said, well, what you got? What'd you do? What'd you do? And we said, well, we got a demo, but it's just a demo and so forth. I had sung rough vocals on it, and it was just James, myself, and Sonny playing on it. Right? He said, let me hear. And we played it, and I think he made it first to the first chorus and into the second verse before he stopped and, oh, that's my song. I need that song. Patrick, I need that song. Can we do this? And me, Sonny, and James looked at each other like, oh, right there. We left the tape. Well, they made a copy. They made a cassette copy for Rick to take with him. And I said, Patrick, we trust you to work out the details of the deal. And a few days later, Patrick came back with the deal with Rick James. And that's how the song was assigned to him. And it came out. And I would like to think that Big Time revitalized his career, which was waning a little bit at that time. And it kind of brought him back into another space where ultimately he was able to do Super Freak and all of the other hit records that he did post Big Time.
Yeah, Garden of Love album. That was, easily my favorite track on there, the first track. How much did it end up sounding like you had envisioned it sounding when it came out?
He changed it, and the changes were cool. Like I said, we didn't really have a solid vision of it. We just did the demo, and we knew where we wanted the verse to be and the lyrics to be and the melody, so forth and so on, the basic structure. But we wanted Rick to have, every ability to be as creative as he needed to be. And so he took it out to California. He did some things, he jazzed it up, juiced it up, and came back with his definitive version, the single that you know. And we were fine with it. We were just like, for instance, he added that part, I was born to funk. I was born to funk and roll in the big time. He added that. And we thought it was great. Horns were great and everything. Patrick was happy with it. So we were cool. It was like, yay.
And then you did some background vocals for Kashif.
Yeah, that was that. Again, that project was with the Aleem brothers. The Aleem brothers met Kashif and began a relationship with Kashif. And they had this great song called Coming Back Home to You, right? Or I think that's the name, Coming Home or I'm Coming Home, one of the two. And they asked me to come in and do the background vocals, arrange the vocals, which I did. And then they took the song to Kashif, and Kashif liked the background and where the vocals were going. So he overdubbed new lead on the vocals that I did, and just kept everything on the album. And Kashif was just a talent that I was just in awe of, because his style, his chord structures, his changes were just brilliant. And so I was really happy to have this opportunity to work with him.
Was he as nice and personable as he was talented musically?
He was friendly. He was cool. He was very cool people. I mean, I never had a problem with it. We did performances, the Aleems and I, with him many times. And he was always just a great, personable person. I never had a problem with him. He was friendly. He was cool.
And I noticed one of the Aleem projects had significant contributions from Edwin Birdsong. How did that come to be?
Edwin Birdsong was a very good friend of Steve of the Aleem twins during the time that They became friends when the Aleem twins were doing background vocals for Jimi Hendrix, right? And that's how they met Edwin Birdsong, and the relationship just continued. So fast forward to around the time that the Aleems and I were working together, and Edwin was still part of the crew, their crew. And of course, I'd known Edwin from the encounters that he had with Black Ivory and myself. But this was the first time that I interacted with him on the producer engineer tip. And Edwin was cool people, man. He was a very, very talented. He was close friends with Stevie, who was another one of my teachers. You know, I always had fun with Edwin. He used to call me Mr. Sunglassy because I always wore sunglasses. So he called me Sunglassy.
Or shades, one of the two would work, I guess.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I used to have this umbrella, you know, a retractable umbrella that covered up and became a cane. And so he used to call me Umbrella Sunglassy. And God rest him. Another one of our angels.
Yes, too many, far too many. But thank goodness we have the great works they've done for eternity.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did you ever get to meet Stevie Wonder?
Yes is the answer to that. Okay, absolutely yes. Stevie became my mentor in 1972.
Oh boy.
When he invited Black Ivory and myself to the Apollo Theater. This is around the time he had just released Talking Book. And he was impressed with the Don't Turn Around album. And this is when performances at Apollo would last a full week, 7 days. He invited us on day one to the matinee, the afternoon show. And of course, I was over the moon to meet him. I was already singing half of his catalog. And I loved everything that he did. So I was really over the moon to meet him. And we was just supposed to be there for the afternoon show, the matinee show. But I asked him if I could stay. And he said, sure, of course you can stay, you know. So we started hanging out. During the time we were hanging out, he would always go to the piano and I'd just sit there and watch him play and ask him questions and stuff like that. So that actually became a teacher-mentor, a mentor-mentee relationship, student-teacher. And he began to impart things to me, you know, invaluable things that I still use today. He taught me a formula for the development of perfect pitch. He taught me how to play without looking at the keyboard and know what you're doing. And he also taught me the virtue and values of humility, as well as the importance of what your song says and what you're releasing into the energy you're releasing into the world with what you write. You know, are you releasing positive energy or negative energy, and why? And I remember he said to me, you always want to make something that your grandkids will be cool to hear. That won't be a problem for them to hear, something you want your grandkids and their kids to hear. And I always took that to heart, to be positive and to try to impart positive messages with my music. So yes, we became very fast friends. When we recorded the Feel It album at the Hit Factory, I remember that we had booked the 5th floor for several days, and Stevie Wonder was right on the 2nd floor, booked for several days. So we'd bounce upstairs and downstairs to each other's sessions during that time. So I consider Stevie Wonder a mentor, a godsend, and I consider it an absolute blessing to have met him and for him to have been so kind as to impart the things that he did.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Leroy.
That's a yes, I met Stevie Wonder.
That's a big yes. Yeah. Man, he was my very first favorite artist, and I still just love him so much.
Mm-hmm. There's nothing about Stevie Wonder not to love, I think, you know. I don't know, you know, I don't know all the personal stuff. I don't know any of that. I prefer that I don't know it, but you know, because we all got personal stuff going on. But as far as his professional self and just the kindness and the humility and the humbleness of the man, and he's a visionary. He's an absolute visionary who has the ability to see the world in ways that no one else sees it, and that rubs off on you.
And just a genius.
Oh, genius only begins to describe him.
Yeah.
You know? The way you would consider Ray Charles a genius, Stevie Wonder, Quincy Jones a genius. He's on that. He's that genius level.
So Continuum was the first release that you were reunited for?
Correct. Around 1995, I returned to the group, and we started performing together, doing Black Ivory performances, myself, Stuart, and Russell. And somewhere around 2000, 2001, I said, hey, it might be a good idea if we do some new recording. And they thought it was a good idea. At this time, all three of us had considerable production skills and abilities on our own right. So I suggested that it would be a good idea for each of us to deliver albums from our production houses. You know, in other words, Leroy Burgess production, Russell Patterson production, Stuart Bascom production. And then once we put it all in the pot, we all work on it together and stuff like that. So this resulted in what is an 11-tune album that really demonstrates the diversity between us as creative people and producers and so forth and so on, while we're still working together in the same group.
How many years transpired between you taking the stage with them?
I would say I left in 77 and I didn't return until 95. So what's that?
18 years. So what was it like? That must have been quite an experience, you know, that first show back together again, I'm thinking.
It was fun, a little bit awkward. We were still feeling each other back out and getting used to each other after a considerable amount of time apart. But ultimately, we managed to get our stride back and our groove back, and from 95, we've just been looking forward.
There's a big fan of this show, Truth and Rhythm, who's an avid record collector, especially like 80s music, and he gave me a few records that he asked me to just ask you about. So I promised him I would do that. He's a big fan. He's actually in the UK, so he has a little different perspective.
UK
on it.
I love the UK. I'm always there. They are so wonderful and so appreciative of my work. I really love those guys.
He asks, who exactly were Personal Touch? Was it a working band or was it just a random name used?
Personal Touch was it was a group name. At that time, producers were creating studio bands, what's called studio bands, because there wasn't an actual band, you know, per se, as you know, like the Jackson 5 or Black Ivory or something like that. They weren't an actual band, but they were a studio concept that was given a name, right? And in this case, Personal Touch was the name of that studio concept, and that was the lead vocals on that was Donna McGee.
He also mentions Conversion, 2 times 12, the track Sweet Thing.
Now, Sweet Thing was a conversion record that, you know, I did. Sonny and James weren't available for that particular composition. So I kind of had to do a conversion record with them in mind on my own. And so that was the second conversion record, this one for Vanguard Records. And that's how that came about. Greg Carmichael contacted me. And at the time, James was away working. I think he was either working with Najee or Bobby Humphrey as their bass player. And I forget where Sonny was, but Sonny wasn't available either. So Greg needed it done right away, and I just took the gig.
Heartbreaker and Stranger. He wanted
Heartbreaker and Stranger were part of, after we did the Log album for South Soul, and it was so successful, South Soul approached me to do an EP, what was to be a 4-tune EP for their label. And Heartbreaker and Stranger were 2 of the 4 songs that I recorded for South Soul under the auspices. And this was the first thing that really came out under my own name as Leroy Burgess. Heartbreak and Stranger came out as a 12-inch single on reverse side. Heavenly did not come out until, the third song, Heavenly, did not come out until about 2001 or 2. And it was featured on the Leroy Burgess anthology album. It has since been remixed and remastered by the Reflex and released on the new South Soul compilation. Then 1+1, which pretty much had disappeared. We had given up hope on it ever being found. Dave Lee from Z Records in London managed to dig up a copy that had the original session on it and all the original parts, and he did an amazing mix on it. And that came out in 2020, December 2020.
last one is Satin Silk and Lace. The lineup.
I know Satin Silk and Lace. I think Allison Williams was one of the people that was a member of that. I'm not sure about Melissa Morgan. And I'm also not sure that, let's see, Satin Silk and Lace. The names that come to mind is Allison and Melissa Morgan. There may have been others, or maybe James Crabb Robinson was a part of that as well, because Satin Silk and Lace was one of the projects by, I believe, Jock Fred Petrus had something to do with that project. Again, it was just something that I was called in to do background vocals for.
As you look back, is there one particular performance or show that just stands out to you? If something happened, whether it was good, whether it was bad, whether it was funny, whether it was unexpected, or what have you?
All of the shows that we did in the 70s were all of the above. That you, funny, unexpected, weird, wild, crazy. They all stand out. So I can't say one more than any other from back in that period. I enjoyed the time that we spent on stage with the Shy Lights during the time Eugene Record was still with us. Squirrel and Red, and know that we were quite close with them. I enjoyed all of it. It was a thrill for me to be a part of that and to be considered a peer to these people that I had spent a large part of my life just being in awe of. A lot of it was a dream come true type thing for me.
Are you able to pick one or two tracks from the catalog that you're just most fond of?
Mainline is one of my favorites. That's just, and part of that is the reuniting with my brothers from Black Ivory. The work that I did with the Aleem twins on the Casually Formal album, I'm particularly fond of, because that really gave me an opportunity to spread my wings as a producer and as a songwriter. The song when Bobby Humphrey did No Way, and she called in Stevie Wonder to play guest harmonica on it. That was an absolute dream come true because this was my mentor actually playing on my composition. And, you know, when that happened, I was like through the moon. All of it has been a journey that has been a blessing, you know, that has really been a blessing to me. I pray and I ask God to just try to keep me worthy of it. And for as long as he puts the strength in me to do it, I'm going to try to do my very best with it. 54 years and counting now.
So I mentioned a while back, and I promised we'd get back to it, new music. What's in the works?
Well, I have, it's actually been open since 2005, but we opened in earnest just in the last 2 years. I now have my own record label called Burgess Entertainment Recording / Pros International. And while I know that's a very long name, that's the name of the company. And on this company, we're putting out new material for me. I'm getting ready to release an album. I just released a single a little while ago, which was a cover of Leonard Bernstein's wonderful song Somewhere. And I did a dance version of that. I have a new artist, Tyrone Williams, who he just released his first album on the label called High Time. We're about to put out his second single. One of my partners on the label, PL Sweets, he is another artist and producer that we put out his first single back in September, and we're gearing up for his second single to come out sometime in the early to mid spring. Finally, I'm excited about my new album. Again, this is the new album under my own name, Leroy Burgess. And the album is called These Days. And it's an allegory on the times that we're going through and the times that we're living in that kind of examines the world for where we're at right now. And I'm quite proud of it because I'd like to think that it has some very positive messages to impart.
When do you think we might hear or see that?
I'm scheduling a release the single is being mixed now. We're doing final mixes on the single now. The name of the single is All Together. And the album I have slated to be released between, say, early March and maybe April. I want it to be out by April or early May at the very latest, the full album. Because again, this is a single place where my current vision is contained. And I'm excited about it because it seems I have a lot to say.
Are you going to produce hard copies?
We're working on trying to get a vinyl budget happening and do a vinyl run before we do digital runs. We're in the midst of negotiating and trying to get those numbers happening. Vinyl is very strange these days because the vinyl manufacturers are backlogged for months. So you got to get something in there now, and then you might have it in your hands, say, by April.
I think I read even Adele couldn't get hers done in time, right? So
yeah, it's. I mean, it doesn't matter how much money you throw at them; they're all backlogged, and so the sooner you can get your project into them, the better, because you're going to have to wait. It's not like, I mean, before you could hit them and you get your project in 2 to 4 weeks or something like that, 6 weeks at the outside. Right now, we're talking months. that you have to wait because they're just backlogged. But yeah, I it's my hope to first release these days and the single altogether on vinyl, and then make it available digitally.
And what's a website where people can go and keep up?
The website is burgessentertainmentrecordings.com. But I think it's the full name, burgessentertainmentrecordings.com. And we have a Burgess and Recordings Facebook page. Of course, I have 2 friend pages and something like 4 fan pages. So we're very accessible and very available. You know, if anybody would like to reach out to us, we're always happy to hear from, you know, people who are interested. One thing that I'd like to say is I just would like to always try to take a moment and just say thank you to everyone who has been kind enough to give my record and my work and my music the time of day and a moment of their time. And I hope that I brought a smile to their face and a smile to their hearts. And I'm just so grateful for them allowing me into their lives for a few moments. So I want to just thank everybody and wish everybody safety and to be well and take care of themselves, and God bless everybody.
Wow, that's fantastic. I'm so glad you said that, Leroy. Thank you. And thank you for doing this. And thank you for all the great music for so many years.
Pleasure is mine. I thank you so much, Scott, for having me. God bless everybody out there, man. You guys are cool. Thank you. My new tour is getting ready to start up. We've already done London once. We're going back to London for the Gala Festival. Then we're going to Amsterdam. I think we have something coming up in Norway above Oslo. That's coming up a little bit later on, and possibly Brazil. And we're just beginning to book it because it's still not safe. You know, different countries are opening on different levels, and you have to be aware of the protocols and be safe so that everybody's safe, the audiences are safe, the protagonists and the band and myself and technicians are all safe. Safety is the first concern. And when it becomes safer for all of us out here, then I look forward to us getting back to what we used to in terms of partying down.
We look forward to that too, for sure. So be safe, take care. Thank you again, and good luck with all these projects you have in the works. It's exciting.
God bless you, man. And thank you so much again, Scott. And yeah, it's exciting. I mean, you know, I love it. I still love music just as much as I did when I was a kid. So praise God for that. Well, thanks again, man.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Truth in Rhythm. A big thank you goes out to our guest as well as to you, the viewer and listener. Also, much gratitude to Pleasure for supplying the show's funky opening and closing music. As a reminder, you can always access the complete list of linked shows by episode at funknstuff.net. I urge you to support this program and receive the extra benefits along with that by subscribing to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube and sharing it with funk, R&B, and jazz lovers, joining Truth and Rhythm's membership program at Patreon, submitting a donation at funknstuff.net, buying Everything is on the One, the First Guide to Funk book at Amazon, shopping at the Funky Things store for cool merchandise at funknstuff.net, and linking through funknstuff.net for all of your Amazon purchases. In addition, if you're an artist or anyone seeking proven, results-oriented professional marketing, PR, writing, or editing consultation or production, check out the media services section at funknstuff.net. Also, I encourage you to drop me a line at scottg@funknstuff.net. I love the feedback, suggestions, guest requests, appearance and sponsorship inquiries, and just talking about my favorite subject, groove-based music. For now, and as always, this is Scott Dr. GX Goldfine saying, keep on vibing to the rhythm of the one.